When history is written by unbiased observers, the record will show that the PLP was the government of right. The UBP has made corruption, deceit, greed, and telling lies the actions of the past and the expectation of the present. Each of the successive PLP governments has had to grapple with your legacy of greed, double-dealing, and venality at the same time that we've had to grapple with your unsubstantiated claims of corruption against us. You have attempted to keep us in a tailspin, always defending ourselves, in spite of how hard we have worked for the people of Bermuda, in spite of the good we have done, in spite of the good we do. This is consistent with your response to misdeeds of the past, to cover massive sores with Band-Aids and platitudes and assume that they will go away. Do not bring them up. Do not apologize for your wrongdoings. Never say that you are sorry. You have no moral authority to run this country. That is why you have no feeling and no stomach for legislation that would require affirmative action to remedy the effects of past discrimination against black people. You want to stick your head in the sand and say, let black people be like everybody else. Let us have policies and laws that are the same for everyone. Well, black people are not like everyone else in this country. Our ancestors and our fathers and mothers, as black people, not as Bermudians, were the only people in this country who were enslaved and made to work for nothing, denied the right to vote, the right to earn money, the right to sit in a movie theater, the right to keep property in Tucker's Town. Our hearts are still sore with the wounds inflicted by the white forefathers of Bermuda. And you cannot rid us of our pain by saying that time is past. Things are different now. Stop dwelling on history and get over it. You want to be the beneficiary of the riches of your ancestors, their wealth, their land, their white privilege, without taking responsibility for their debts. I am not a lawyer, but I know that estate law does not work like that. If you want to accept the assets of an estate, you must accept the liabilities. This country owes black people, and we as a nation must try to find a way to pay that debt. That is what workforce equity is all about. That is what the big conversation is all about. We are not saying to anyone, hire a black person who is not qualified or discriminate against everyone who is not black. We are saying you must help a black person who is qualified. We are saying that because of past discrimination, we do not know each other as well as we should know each other. We are not a part of each other's natural network, not because we as Bermudians were separated in the past, but because we as black and white Bermudians were segregated in the past. We are still living with the remnants of that segregation. We cannot ignore that. We must acknowledge that in a healthy, non-recriminatory way, but acknowledge it we must, and make special accommodation for it. We must. Otherwise, it will always be there between us. But what else are we to expect from an opposition whose leader, born in 1958, stands up and says he does not know about race in Bermuda, that he does not see color? We should expect exactly what we have gotten. An opposition who blames the racial divide in Bermuda on me. And for those of you who are afraid of this kind of language, and for those of you who think I am polarizing this country, thumb through the pages of the Ombudsman's report on racism at the hospital. Young people, if you think I'm making it all up and that I'm in some 60s time warp, then read a 2007 story of systemic and institutionalized racism in one of this country's revered institutions. Do not buy what some folk are selling about my dividing this country on race. When I arrived from Helene Darrell Brown's womb on May 17, 1946, I found this country polarized. I found this country where black people who spoke about race were considered troublemakers by blacks and whites alike. Well, I will not shrink from the big conversation. Workforce equity, Goodwill Plus, or any other program that healthily deals with the bitter racist legacy of my country. I do not intend to leave this country as I found it. I believe in the unity of races, but unity without honesty is useless. The words of a wise white leader who was large in stature, discernment, and grace bear repeating on this subject. U.S. President Lyndon Baines Johnson had the intelligence and understanding to say, only 7 years after Michael Dunkley was born, quote, "You do not make a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bring him up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair. Equal opportunity is essential, but it's not enough. I long and live for the day when there will be no need to have this discussion, when there will be no need to use affirmative action to remedy the effects of past discrimination, but that day is not here yet. And UBP, until you and your leader, whose head is firmly planted in 1958 sand, acknowledge and deal with the issue of race fairly and squarely, you will have no moral authority to run this country. Until you acknowledge and apologize for many of your past lies and negative admonitions, you will have no moral authority to run this country. And I'm not talking about the old UBP. I'm talking about the new UBP with a few different characters. Grant Gibbons, acknowledge that you were wrong when you declared loudly in 1998 that the lights would be out on international business if the PLP won the government. Bob Richards, why do you still live here? You and your wife were going to move to South America because you could not survive in a Bermuda led by the Progressive Labor Party.